I was in the SEAL teams. I was deployed to the Philippines, and we were doing a training mission. It got so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We got spread out in our column. I felt my energy.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Tautua Talk. I'm your host, Tautua, and we're going to jump right into today's episode. We have a very special guest. His name is Walt Disney. He is a former Navy SEAL who spent many tours serving this country, and since leaving the military, he's opened up a practice here in the Kansas City area where he specifically addressed marital issues, stress, PTSD, and his main focus is on what he calls shield bearers. Now that's any military, police, fire, healthcare workers, and the general public, but he has a very, very special, unique set of skill sets. And as you watch the episode, you'll tune in to some of the insights that he has and gives actionable steps on how you can address any of these issues if they're affecting you directly. In the description at the end of the episode, there will be a list of the books and some of the resources that he mentions. And I'm just excited to share this interview with you. It was very insightful for me, and I am looking forward to working with Mr. Walt here in the near future because we both share that same passion when it comes to first responders, those who serve others, and especially our military, police, fire, nurses, and anybody who serves. Without further ado, we'll jump right into the episode. It starts off with us engaging in some dialogue, and stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this one.
So what we're talking about that gets thwarted by growing up with these too much is we lose the practice of connecting with people through our mirror neurons and what Dr. Daniel Siegel talks about, IPNB, interpersonal neurobiology. So it's our brains picking each other up, not just our voices, not just whatever. It's all the meta communication, which is dominant in human interaction. The data of communication is actually very little. Facial expression, that is paramount. People with Asperger's or autism spectrum disorder have a very challenging time picking up nonverbal cues from other human beings. There was a Dr. Simon Baron Cohen, who happens to be the cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen. Remember Borat, right?
Yeah,
So
that's what
his cousin created, and you can go online and get this. It's called Seeing Emotions Through the Eyes. It's a test you can take. And people who score very low on that are not able to pick up the eye expression stuff. So it's a big part of what's going on. I'm not sure if that's the end to our conversation, but it's a big part of it because you and I are in a realm where we're dealing with the demographic that I call shield bearers. Okay. So it's veterans, law enforcement, first responders, fire medic, and frontline medical personnel. Okay. And what we're dealing with is the heavy load from that and trying to unburden that load. I've got a metaphor that I like to use for that. And it is that we're all pushing an invisible wheelbarrow through life. And when we bump into imperfect people, they put their BS in our wheelbarrow and try to convince us it's ours. Sometimes we heroically take it on, like the shield bearers. We do that to stand between life and death, good and evil.
Yeah.
And we take that on to help humanity. The challenge is we need to get that out of our wheelbarrow and process it. And when we do, it turns into wisdom. But we can't do that alone. Dr. Brené Brown, if you've ever heard of her, she was famous for a TED Talk about 10 years ago, I think, said the difference between suffering and trauma is being alone. We all suffer. Aristotle said, always be kind, for everyone's fighting a hard fight. We all suffer. But when we suffer alone, it turns into trauma. This gets back into the IPNB because it's about attachment. Are you there for me? Like you would never, as a firefighter, you would never go into a house a fire, a structure alone, would you?
Heck no. It's actually
Only in extremis. Only in extremis.
yeah, yeah,
We can't. Oh, we can't say absolutely never, but we won't go in there alone. Not only that, but we're going to have somebody backing us up. They're going to be on the hydrant, regulating the water. There's going to be a command center. There's going to be more people getting ready to back us up should we need it. So the difference between suffering and trauma is being alone. And that is all about attachment. So there's two ways to look at this. I'm going to break it down into feminine and masculine energy because they express a little differently. Okay. Masculine is creating a safety, a structure, and feminine is making it warm, soft, and open. Now, we have a lot of talk these days about gender. Both genders have both. We have that protective aspect of creating safety and structure, and we have that nurturing aspect. Okay. We're supposed to have both. Okay. And it's just a distribution as of such. So when we talk about feminine energy feeling safe, there's a great book by Dr. Sue Johnson called Hold Me Tight. And it's simply that. Doesn't matter who it is. It's hold me tight. And as I said, this is not gender specific. This is masculine or feminine energy. Okay.
sure.
Because in working with a number of different programs and a number of different groups, that there have been participants of the masculine gender who have said, you know what, I just need a hug. There's an important part to that. There's a really fun story. I worked with a program and we did this leap of faith where you climb a telephone pole and stand on top of a telephone pole and leap off and try to hit a ball. And you leave this burden behind, but it had a weight limit of 300 pounds. And we had a gentleman who I great affection for this guy as a brother, as a warrior, as a shield bearer, weighed 315 pounds at the time.
Oh my.
The guy looked like those rescue heroes with the strong block head and the strong block hands and the strong block feet, right? Firefighter cop, right?
Yeah.
He looked like that. And we didn't have the option to put him on that. So we were walking through and processing the burden that he carried alone. And it was like, I just looked at him and I go, what do you need? And he goes, honestly, I just need a hug right now. And so I just wrapped my arms around. I'm not a big guy. I peaked out at 5'9", 196, okay? I'm not 5'9". I've shrunk. I'm not 196, thank God, anymore. There might be some age in there. I'm weighing about 187. And I picked this guy up who's 6'3", 315, right? Behemoth of a man. And I just grab him and I just lift him up and I just hold him. And I go, okay, take a deep breath and just relax. Just let me hold you up. Let me lift you up. And he started to relax. And I just held him up. And after a minute or so, Kia, it was powerful. He was like on my shoulder, like I would hold my own son. And it was beautiful and it was powerful. There was nothing twisted about it. It was what we know as phileo, brotherly love. And he hugged me back and he said, thank you so much. And I sent him down. I mean, of course, we went around and in that group, a lot of that embrace going on. And there's an important chemical reason for all that. It was funny because, not funny, haha, but doggy head tilt thing. One of the guys goes, holy crap, Walt, you're strong. I'm like, it's not my fault. I didn't make me, right? You don't empower me. But that's what that guy needed. It created that sense of safety. So in the masculine form or expression of this is, I've got your back. We see tattoos all the time, IGY6, right? And there's nothing like, I'll tell you a story about this because we're getting into neurobiology. I was in the SEAL teams. I was deployed to the Philippines and we were doing a training mission. It got so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We got spread out in our column. I felt my energy. You're like spidey senses up, right? And so you do what you're supposed to do, make connection and close that gap. So when I got up and I put my hand on the shoulder of the man in front of me, I literally felt my nervous system just downgrade, just relax a little bit. And then I knew there were two guys behind me. And when they catch up and they're ready to go, they'll squeeze the shoulder, right? Call it in the stack. And these two guys came up behind me, hand on shoulder, squeeze, we're ready to go. I felt my nervous system relax more. And then I gave the squeeze. And then we just started patrolling through the jungle, really close to each other, just groping our way through it. That's an example of I got your six. You felt it before. You knew your partner was on the back with a Halligan or whatever it was, or holding the hose with you, or there was a third guy with a radio and a Halligan. That's what it talks about in terms of security and attachment. Very important. Wow. We are communal creatures. We're made for relationship. And that's why we have such a dispersion of diverse abilities. And I believe the shield bearers are a unique segment of that. But we have such a diverse array of abilities. We need each other. We need each other. Right? We need those people who will do the hard things and aren't as affected by it by other people. This gets us into the mental health because eventually the wheelbarrow gets full. You've probably felt that yourself.
Yes. Yes.
I felt it. Right? There's some point we can only deadlift so much. Our grip just fails. But what it does is if we take that and turn it into fertilizer, instead of just toxicity in our life with incompetent, unworthy, unlovable, unsafe, those messages reeling around, unless we process through these things together, then we're carrying around all that BS, that toxic belief system. BS means belief system.
Well, I was thinking of a different BS, which a lot of people carry a lot of that around too as well.
Yes, it's that too. Yeah. It's that too. But we look at humanity, Kia, and it's hereditary and it's passed down. You look at babies, they don't have BS, toxic BS. They're just pretty pure. They have some ego because we need to have ego to protect ourselves, keep ourselves fed and watered and sleep, right? But most of the time, you watch kids when they're safe, they'll laugh and they'll share. That's what we're made for. We're made for that. They'll engage, laugh, and share.
Wow. I think that draws in a lot of highlights, and I think a lot of people can associate those different characteristic traits depending on where they're at in the spectrum. I thought you brought up a really good point. So you had mentioned we've got this masculine energy and we've got this feminine energy. One of the key things for me that helped me put this together is keeping it simple. Firemen like keeping things simple. It's easier for us to comprehend. But learning that there's these two different type of archetypes, I'm not sure how you classify them. I had came across, I'd have to find the video or the ebook that I read, but described what these different characteristic traits were, the masculine and the feminine. I believe it's the enema and the animus, if I may have that right. That's the unconscious masculine energy that men may have, but then they also have that, everybody has both, and then also have that unconscious feminine energy. Hope I'm classifying these right. You hop in if I'm wrong. But what we're finding is, like you had mentioned the story about the gentleman that just said he just wanted a hug. But on the outside, he had a very masculine, forward type of projection that he was giving off. And this book that I read said that people that often do that maybe are lacking are really yearning out for more of the feminine energy. And it's the warmth, the
Yeah.
hugs, the feeling of safety.
Yeah.
Hence, they've got to project that masculine side out a lot. When they
Yeah.
do get a dose of that, I think
Yeah.
a hug from Walter Disney alone would have that effect on anybody. But that was a great example of
Yeah.
him getting a little bit of that
Yeah.
need, that nurture, that warmth,
Yeah.
security,
Yeah.
being such a big and burly man
Yeah.
that was so impactful to him because he's had to be very masculine and forward on
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah. So that brings up a couple different things. What you're talking about, the animus and anima, is Jungian, Carl Jung. Very,
Carl
very
Jung.
much his theory. Joseph Campbell, Warrior with 1,000 Faces, The Hero's Journey, which is a really potent meta narrative. Okay. And we have to spiritualize our journey in this world to
Sure.
make sense of a lot of things, whatever that is for either person, any person, right? It has to have a meta narrative to it because it brings purpose. It gets into Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. We have to have purpose and meaning. A lot
Wounded
of people
Healer.
have heard of Jordan
Wounded
Peterson.
Healer is one.
We have to have the adventure.
Sure.
Okay. So if we don't get the proper amount, what we need, right? So some people can live on 6 hours of sleep. Some people live on 9. Okay. Everybody's different. And this is where we have to have positive, unconditional regard. Okay. Because so what if I need 20 hugs a day and you need 3 to be healthy, right? It's just difference. Okay. And that's the kind of difference I can get behind, right? The problem is if we don't get what we need, the authentic need, we will search for an illegitimate resolution to that legitimate need.
Wow.
And that's where a lot of the aberrant behaviors and addictions come in. With trauma, which is what we're talking about here, we have anger. Almost every time somebody comes in and they go, my wife says I have an anger problem. Of course, I'm predominantly dealing with the masculine. And anger is a mask. There's times to be angry. I think it was Socrates that said, anger is not the problem. It's at whom, about what, when, and where you express it that is the issue. Anger says somebody's violated a boundary. Okay. And it is masculine strength. Okay. Again, all genders have both. It is the masculine strength because it's no, not crossing that line. Very interesting story. This is, if you've never heard Andrew Huberman.
Oh, I have.
God, I love that guy's podcast. He's a hero. He's a modern hero to me because he's got this great gift and he goes, it is our intent to bring science and science-based techniques free at no cost to the public and great applicable stuff. So he had a scientist who studies olfaction or smell. And he highlighted something called hexadecanol. Hexadecanol is a molecule that's in the tears of babies. And this is what it does to the masculine gender or predominantly masculine gender. It soothes us. How is that good for the baby? How's it good for the species? How's it good for perpetuation? The more aggressive gender gets soothed and does not act aggressively to this very vulnerable being. Propagates connection and propagates survival and flourishing. What it does, hexadecanol, does to the feminine of the species is creates a protective posture and energy. So in this case, the mother typically will gather the child and get that mama bear posture to her, thus protecting the child, creating nurturing, right? So the child does not suffer alone. Very interesting stuff. So I love Huberman stuff.
Wow. It's so neat to put it all together like that when you draw things back at a physiological level that also play into human evolution, and it simplifies it, but also makes a lot of sense. When you bring that up, everybody with kids can realize, yeah, I was pretty calm every time I was around my child's tears or a child crying at that. I think it's very interesting. Huberman's got some amazing insights to it. What makes him special too is how he's able to articulate it for the average person to understand it. Like
Right.
myself, you all have a lot of research and background into it, but to make it palatable for the everyday person, I think is phenomenal. And that's why it's been
Right.
so impactful.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's got a book coming out called Protocols. I've ordered it, I pre-ordered it. Just if nothing else to support the man in his good venture in life, he is making a better we out of society.
I think that's
Which
the ultimate goal, right? Is leave society better than you found it. And it's a great approach to take really to anything. I make this person better. Can I make my organization
yeah,
better and those around me? We're jumping right into it. I could sit here and listen to you talk all day, but for those listening in or watching in, let me give you a quick intro on who it is and why it is and what it is we're talking about today. Obviously, Walter has been sharing some deep insights with us, and hopefully you all are finding it very helpful and intuitive. But to give you a quick intro into who Walt is and what he does and what he stands for and his background, why he's so well qualified to talk about this, let me get into a quick intro. So today on Tautua Talk, welcome back in. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. You see him on the screen now, whose journey is nothing short of remarkable. It's Mr. Walter Disney. He spent 13 years as a Navy SEAL, where he specialized as a corpsman, providing critical battlefield medical care during his 3 deployments. After serving his country at such a high level, Walter made the decision to return to his roots here in Kansas City, where we both are locally, and embarking on a new mission. This time as a licensed marriage and family therapist. Hence why he has so many intuitive insights into the topics we've been talking about already. Through his practice at Disney Family Therapy, Walter works with veterans, first responders, couples, and families to help them navigate the complex emotional challenges with the same dedication and focus that defined his military career. Beyond his work as a therapist, Walter also is a key figure at Camp David. It's an organization that provides support and sanctuary to veterans, law enforcement, first responders, and their families. With his unique background in both military service and mental health, Walter brings a wealth of experience to our conversation today. So finally, join me in welcoming Mr. Walter Disney to Tautua Talk. Thank you, and I hope you don't mind the intro, but I am just so intrigued, and even the first couple minutes into this, taking notes, and hopefully anybody listening in too as well. So welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I really like what you're doing. I wanted to give you a shameless plug if I can, because in our conversation before, you told me about the meaning of Tautua. And I believe you said it's servant, right?
Yes.
Did I capture that correctly?
A literal
Which,
meaning is being of service to something higher than yourself. So to be Tautua, of service to your church, family, and to your village,
yeah,
is the common understanding. But yes, to be of Tautua, that person is Tautua to his family. You, obviously, Walter, you're Tautua to all the shield bearers, which we
yeah,
identify as anybody, police, military, anybody who's served. So
yeah,
service-based people who selfishly give to others, sometimes to others more than themselves. And hence, I think that's why therapy, like you talked about, when that wheelbarrow gets too heavy, we call it a backpack in the fire service. Your backpack's just, you put rocks in there, you forget about it, you zip it up, compartmentalize it, forget it till later. But you
yeah,
can't deadlift every pound of weight that's out there. So eventually it
right,
gets full. So
right,
what do you do? How do you know it's full? And
yeah,
I think that's some of the services that you all provide there.
yeah. I'm gonna build on a whole lot of stuff that we just brought up here. I mentioned the metaphor of the wheelbarrow because you can't carry BS in a backpack. It'll drain out, if you will. And I find that to be an incredibly appropriate because let's face it, the worst parts of society are really crappy. And there's a statistic, I hope I quote it correctly, that most common Americans will incur 1.27 traumatic events in their life. Seeing somebody dead, having some life threatening circumstance occur to them. But firefighters over a 25-year span I believe the number was 587 life-threatening or critical incidents. That's heavy. That's a lot of stuff. And so there's got to be a way, not just physically, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally, to unburden that. Okay. And the tagline of Camp David, which I'm going to remind people, camp-david.org. We couldn't make it just Camp David. I don't know. Somebody took that.
Somebody's got it already.
Actually, there's a apparel company in Kansas City. It's Overland Park, named Camp David. So it's campdavid.com. Camp David has been taken because somebody captured it so they could parlay it somewhere on the Ethernet somewhere. But we have camp-david.org. It's all over my Gucci stuff. Right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It even has my name on it. Yeah. One of our supporters, KM Tactical, out in Lee Summit, made that for me. So they do all that stuff. So Kyle was a former highway patrol and created that company. Very proud of any American who sets out to do good things well. Okay. We're back on the Tautua, the servant to others, which is what shield bearers are, right? Yeah. We have at Camp David created some swag. And one of the T-shirts that we have, which I'm most proud of, is my preferred pronoun is we.
I like that.
Okay. Because when we think in those terms, it's not egocentric. It is a better we. We're lifting everybody up. It's about lifting everybody up. And that could raise some hairs with some people, but quite honestly, it's hard to argue with that when we think of that. And of course, we match it with the American flag because this is part of what gives us our liberties to exercise our gifts in such a way, is we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Okay? A lot of power in those words. But also there's a theory, and you'll see it, this picture up behind me. Okay? It's a theory called internal family systems. It was created by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And I have some resources on my website, Disney Family Therapy. We're getting some of those put over to Camp David, camp-david.org as well. But it says that what happens is through our lives, we come across these challenging things. The challenge basically our competence, our worth, lovability, and safety. And so in thus, we develop this kind of watchdog or sentry. It's like touching fire. Mm-hmm. Once you touch fire, you have this part of you that's always watching for fire, right? And sometimes it'll do illegitimate or reactive things to keep us from getting burned again. You might pay attention to that, Kia.
I'm trying to. Yes. I'm listening. The burn.
The burns. Yeah. Awesome. Got it up there. So, yeah, there's the picture right there. Look at you going tech savvy. Love it. So, see the thing that looks the yin yang for the second or third in your search there?
Okay.
That defines Dr. Schwartz's theory that, as we are created, fearfully and wonderfully made, in the center, there's 8 C's, and I don't feel bad not naming them all because Dr. Schwartz always misses a couple of them. But we live with courage and clarity, connectedness, communication, right? If you blow that up, I'll even read it better. But creativity and confidence. This is how we were made, with power, love, and sound mind. Okay? But what happens is if you look at that diagram, I don't know if I'm reading it correctly, but up toward the top on one side, there's exiles. Exiles are the ones that are carrying the burns, the injuries, the shame, the hurt, the fear, the worthlessness, the unlovability, okay, which are contrary to what we were made to be. So they're in contention. These are the burdens, okay? To protect the burdens, we have proactive parts. There's managers, okay? Overactive, they're strivers, they're caretakers, right? So a caretaker, if I'm your caretaker, then I'm valuable to you, which makes me overcome some of my worthlessness, except it never works out that way. It's always, that's an illegitimate resolution to a legitimate need. of feeling valued. There's other aspects to that my eyes can't pick up on the small screen because I'm
Yeah,
keeping cold
it
now.
is a little small, but I think this is a great diagram. So exile is
Yeah.
anybody who holds painful emotions that have been isolated from conscious self for protection
Right.
of the system or for the parts of safety. Can become increasingly extreme in their efforts to be cared for and share their story. Carries burdens from
Yes.
being wounded. Examples: rage, dependency, shame, fear, terror, grief, loss, loneliness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
pretty apt description. Dr. Schwartz was genius in his approach on this. I usually share with people Spotify podcast with Dr. Richard Schwartz and 5 Hour Work Week. What's his name? Tim. I'll think of it when I'm not trying to think of it.
Of course. I've got one called 4 Hour Work Week. I thought I'd.
Yeah, 4 Hour Work Week. Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
So Tim Ferriss and Dr. Schwartz talk about IFS, and he goes through the history of it and then example of it. So what this is saying, and this is where I got to this point, let me kind of identify firefighters. So in the top left that I see are managers. The bottom center are firefighters. Managers are proactive. They're trying to manage boundaries, keep us safe. But when something breaches the boundary, we're very overactive, very reactive. And these are some of the behaviors, very protracted. So we get a lot of addictions: sleep, shopping, work, sex, diet, exercise, computer, video games, iPhones, right? Or any technological phones. Binge eating, right? I'm nervous, so I'm just going to eat. Suicidality. It's weird to think that suicidality can be a helper. But what the approach is saying, this is a part of you that's trying to protect you from that pain. And I got to tell you, in my work, so many people are thinking, I'm in so much pain. I just want it to stop. Suicide will stop the pain. They believe, okay, which is another part of it. Again, typically an illegitimate resolution to a legitimate need of living with some peace and some strength and some autonomy, voice, and choice. Follow that?
Yeah.
So, self harm, right? There's a lot of songs about pain to feel alive because our nervous system oftentimes goes numb. That's another part of us, numb us out so we don't feel the pain. So the reason I bring this up is not only to substantiate my preferred pronoun being we, because I've got a lot of these in here and they're very subtle. It's very somatically anchored, like feelings in our body, sensations in our body. That's why yoga and breath work's very helpful, very integrated into this. But it also talks about when the wheelbarrow gets too full, how do we respond to it? And this is where we get into what typically we call the diagnosis of PTSD, right? So there's an elevated anxiety. Maybe there's some depression, taking the joy, motivation out of light. There's a distractibility, can't focus, don't sleep well. So people start doing these illegitimate things to treat it, but it never brings the resolution. I feel very anxious. I got this. I can't tell you how many people with PTSD say, I can't stop the thoughts. Only when I drink do I stop the thoughts. Yeah, but guess what happens? Next morning, you've got shame from drinking too much. You feel like crap because you're hungover, and the thoughts are still there. So in my therapy room, I'm going to do a little camera adjust here.
Sure.
In my therapy room, look over my shoulder. Can you see that?
It looks a neck pillow.
It is a wooden elephant.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
I was way off.
Yeah, that's okay. Bad camera work on my part. So it's an elephant. And I tell people that I work with, it's the elephant in the room because what we're talking about is not what we're talking about. People come in here and say, I've got this spouse who's an addict, or people go, I got a drinking problem. Dr. Gabor Mate has a book, When the Body Says No, in the Presence of Hungry Ghosts. He says, don't tell me about the addiction. Tell me about the pain. The pain is what needs to get resolved. In medical terms, that is the etiology That is what needs to be addressed. That's the pathology that needs to be resolved. We resolve that, the drinking goes away. Make sense?
Absolutely.
So in when we're talking about trauma, and I'm going to be a little surly here for a second.
By all means.
How many times have you heard people go, man, that was a hard run? And somebody will turn to them and go, you knew what you were getting into.
Often.
Or something like that. Well, that is BS. Because nobody can tell the future, number one. The other thing is that person who said you knew what you were getting into isn't dealing with their elephant in the room. They're just stuffing it. They're trying to shackle it, cage it so it doesn't get out, bottle it up. And because they don't know how to deal with it, they're shaming somebody else into whatever they get moved into. This is the firefighter in the firefighter, right? The steely-eyed, nothing can penetrate.
There's also an archetype for firefighter.
Yeah.
That I've learned.
And quite honestly, who is the firefighter that you respect the most? I'm going to name somebody. There's a guy I know. His name's Richard Bull. He was in Lawrence. He just retired from Lawrence Fire. He wasn't a rate grabber. He didn't try to get up but he did get advanced. But I'll tell you what, this guy, he is aptly named. He's a big guy, probably 6'1", 215, strong man. But I'll tell you what, he's leading their peer support. He's leading the drive there. And people, I know his reputation out there because I get to do work with Lawrence. They have a great program where they just go, you need help? You want help? Go get it. We'll pay for it. It's a great program. But what makes Richard so healthy and so admirable is the fact that he has the strength matched with compassion. He's not shaming somebody because they've had a hard run. We've all had hard runs. Part of my credentialing in the military as a medic was to become paramedic qualified. And I will tell you, the hardest runs are babies, kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When I mention this and when somebody hears it, they're going to feel that. They're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that. I want to trigger anybody. I remember it was actually in the foothills of California, East LA, Highway 10 or 210, Monrovia. And the foothills, they had some nicer homes, right? This mother had called 911, comes running out with her baby, and literally 10 feet away from me, tosses her baby to me. For a mother to do that is incredibly tragic. And the baby was literally blue. Anoxic. I remember it. I said, come with me. In the ambu, gone. Right? Remember, it almost comes back. The difference is, I don't think I didn't do good enough. I should have done this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done this. I don't think that anymore. I turned it into wisdom. Don't waste time. You got to get airway and air in that baby. And you got to support the mother at the same time. Come with us, right? It turns that toxicity into wisdom. And that's what we want to do, okay? And the only way that happens is when we give each other permission to be vulnerable. That's what the Camp David's about. Our foundational courses, Shield Bearers course, it's 12 weeks. I tell people it's a mix between a trauma course, outpatient course, psychoed mostly, the anonymity and wisdom and fellowship accountability of AA, the grace of church, and the humor of the team room.
Yes.
Or the lunchroom, or the locker room, whatever you want to call it.
Dinner
right?
table. Table talk.
Right? Yeah. Table talk with Kia.
Let me ask you this. You're giving some great ways that people can find solutions to when they get to that stage where the wheelbarrow's full. Do you have any key signs, 3 ways of telling, or some ways to tell if somebody is in need of this type of approach, and how to say it to them? So one, how would you bring it up to them? And then two, what would be some of the solutions we offer? Obviously, you have this program that's aimed at helping somebody.
Yeah.
But what are some ways that others can recognize that this person may benefit a lot from a program like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question, getting to the point we're at. So to answer that, you said signs and symptoms. So we have
Yes,
signs and symptoms of PTSD. You can take tests and everything, but the
sure.
number one sure sign is, are you breathing? If you're breathing, you need to deal with this.
Absolutely.
Okay. I
Yep.
can't tell you how many people I've worked with that said, God, I wish I knew this at the beginning of my career. They're simple disciplines. So I was good at shooting. That's why I went to the sniper curriculum and loved shooting pistol. And it's all about the front sight focus. I actually integrate this into some stuff that we do. So it's all about front sight focus and trigger pull. I estimate I've shot about 750,000 rounds in 13 years in the SEAL teams. Okay. I would also estimate, multiply that by 10. That's how many times I've dry fired. So one of the modalities that we do is breathing. How often do you pay attention to your breathing? How often do you check in with your breathing? Okay. Breath is foundational. When you're stressed, check your breath. You will find, I still do it today. I'm on a slope of imperfect practice, but I'm going upward. That's what we want, not perfection, but seeking perfection, we reach excellence. Okay. So back to my question, who needs it if you're breathing? Out in Topeka, there was a Menninger clinic, and Dr. Carl Menninger was asked who needs therapy, and he said simple, everyone. Therapy means to attend to. All we're doing is attending to the heavy weight in our life. That's it. But we need to do it honestly. Sometimes that takes somebody to give us a different perspective on it so we can see the elephant in the room. Sometimes we can see the elephant and calm the elephant. Okay. So this brings up a good point. And this is why I love the work that you're doing, because there's nothing that's no part of us that's isolated. Okay. So if we think heart, mind, body, soul, okay, let's separate those out and just work on the soul. You can't do it. It's all integrated. Okay. It's an integrative process. And that's why our philosophy is to use a multi-modality approach to dealing with the burden of being a shield bearer, holding that shield up. Okay. And it is all of the above. The spirituality is more individual. And again, we're at the nexus of our entity. And so that gets out. One of the things we do in there is a moral injury. Moral injury is when it violates your values. Okay. So we had a 9/11 memorial evening, and we had Representative Mike Hafner from Missouri, who was an F-18 pilot. And he told the story of where he was. He was on deck. He was ready to launch off a carrier when 9/11 happened. Like the plane hit the tower, shut him down. Everybody went into the situation room. They said, okay, this is what we have to do. We have to get on aircraft and go patrol DC. And they knew they were airliners they were using. So in the briefing room, he says, I had to ask this brand new pilot, who was going to be one of a number of volunteer guys. By the way, he asked 18 pilots. He needed 9. He goes, I need the volunteers first. All 18 of them stood up, right? That's a shield barrel. Here I am, send me. Once again into the breach. So he said he had to ask that pilot. He said, I need to know, if you're asked to shoot down a commercial airline with 280 people in it so that we can save many more, can you do it? That is an example of breaching moral and values of a human being. And that's what we ask of shield bearers. People sleep well at night because other people are taking on those moral challenges. Okay. And that's what people aren't necessarily aware of. And that's why we created this organization. Okay. So it is to create a community of the brave, recovering and restoring each other back to service. Tautua. Okay.
Absolutely right.
That's what it's about, because the dark night of the soul doesn't happen during Walt Disney's 9 to 6 office hours for therapy. It's at 2:14 a.m. when you can't sleep and nightmares have awakened you again. And so this community, if you have 5 people, you're doing really well. If you have 3, you're in a good place. If you have 1, you're lucky, but we need to do some work on that. Because you need to be able to call somebody up who is like, the wheelbarrow's too heavy. The BS is spilling out. I need you. That's what we're trying to create. And those people are exposed to what it takes to just be with people. A lot of the peer programs, a lot of good stuff out there. But here's one of the challenges there, and you can attest to this or argue this as your experience brings forth wisdom. But all those are either tied to a department or a fraternal order or a union. And in that, there's some threat of reprisal.
Yes.
Make sense?
Makes dollars.
I love it. Doesn't mean that these aren't good resources. But a cop is not going to go to his captain and go, man, I'm drinking too much and I can't focus. And the captain has to be responsible and due diligence for liability. Just has to. Wants to support him, but also has this tension arises. Everybody knows it, so they're not going to say it. Why? They don't want their badge and their gun taken. Especially in vulnerable times like that. That brings a sense of security, right? No firefighter wants to be pulled off the truck. You just paid leave for a while. Just go take care of it. That's shaming as well. Yes. Should have already mastered everything. If not, I should hide all my excrement. And I definitely should hide all my emotions.
Wow.
Shame. Brene Brown talks about that. So those come from Dr. Tim Nelson, who was one of my professors, and magnanimously, unfortunately, but Dr. Tim Nelson succumbed to cancer. And he died on the very day that I was given full licensure. And I find that to be very auspicious. He was one of the professors at Friends University, where I got my master's program. Can't recommend it enough, but it's okay. The torch is passed. You got to fight the fight. And when I started the program, Dr. Tim said, welcome to the fight, brother. Because this is where the battle is. It's all in here. And this is where we have to fight it.
Let me ask you a question. You touched on it briefly, and it really resonates home with me when you talked about, all right, if somebody is having this issue, it's very tough to go and tell your company officer that I'm having issues with drinking, because then that dynamics worked in where they have to look out for their guy, but also, they have policies to follow. What would be a recommendation you would have to put somebody at ease in that situation, or what would be a recommended step, or what would be a solution you would recommend to somebody that's maybe using that as their one hurdle to reach out? I got shame.
Yeah, I want to first acknowledge how scary that is. We get into cognitive distortion called catastrophization. The worst is going to happen. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my wife, lose my family, lose my pretty red truck, because everybody knows firefighters drive red trucks.
Ours are unfortunately yellow. We get it all the time.
Right? And we create this just tsunami of catastrophe. That's scary. don't do it alone. Get somebody who can walk with you. Okay. Brene Brown does another kind of video on, I forget what, it's a card. They animated one of her presentations. And the person that shows empathy is the person that doesn't try to fix it, but gets down in the pit with you and just says, I'm so sorry, but I'm glad you told me. I'm here with you. What do you need? Doesn't try to fix you, which is very much a masculine energy response. And it's also our own fear. Remember the guy that said, you know what you're getting into, right? Yep. They just go fix it. It doesn't help. That puts more BS in the wheelbarrow. Somebody who is just going to be a friend and asks permission to offer something. I have an idea. Can I share it with you? Yes. And they do. Or no. And they respect that. Not right now. Okay?
Sure.
You do more damage if you tell people what to do. That's number one. But the other is there are resources. There are ways to do it. They will all be imperfect and challenging. But it's like you. I can almost guarantee you there are dozens of people in your service that will reach out to you, Kia, because you've presented this truth to them.
I would hope so. And if I may share a bit of personal background into this particular question and why I searched so hard for solutions, and I believe why we even crossed paths in the first place, is that Aaron Eckerberg, with his approach, was one of the few people that I found that did offer a solution in a non-judgmental way, but was truly worried about me as a person to get me some resources, whether this treatment therapy, which I found very beneficial, helped me. Again, to make this a bit of a personal story is hence why I do what I do, reaching out to other individuals and foundations that offer the type of services you have, because in my personal experience, when I did reach out for help in the FD approach, I didn't get what I felt was the response I was expecting. And so we all buy into this when it comes to the service, that it's a family. But what I felt straight away when I needed help was that I was an employee, which is a job. But it made me feel that shame you were talking about, to where, wow, this person really doesn't care about me.
Yeah.
I need to reach out to someone who just wants to help me get help.
Yeah.
Ask for permission, offer the solutions. And so going that route for me was very beneficial.
Yeah.
And I did get a lot of benefit from it, but it also tainted that line of communication in a way for me. That's why I ask those questions. If somebody feels like they should reach out for resources, what's a way to identify somebody else? And what are some options we can give them? Because when it comes to the job, what I've learned is they just want somebody in the seat. That's what their main concern is. And the next part of that is they're worried about the individual that's sitting in that seat.
So can I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. When you went to them for help and they gave the response that they did, can you go back to that interaction?
Yes, I remember. I began this ETMS therapy.
We're going to plug ETMS Missouri.
Sure.
Because they're a great organization, but they're actually all over the nation.
Yes.
They're in about 13 states now. But ETMS is electrotransmagnetic stimulation, magnetic therapy that they apply that helps with sleep, anxiety, depression, PTSD. We've got a guy in our program that showed the pictures, and he literally had a dark spot on his brain. And afterward, it's vitalized. Beautiful stuff. But what I want to take you back to, and this is why, when you reached out for help and they said they responded as an administration instead of a family.
Yes.
How did that make you feel? What feelings or impact did that generate for you?
That's a great question. And for me, in the way I was brought up culturally and just the way I am as a person, is it's complete buy-in. This is my family. It's how I feel about my current family and my culture and the people I really care about. And so the fire department to me had always been my family. It's the way I envisioned it. But this was one of those few moments where I felt like I needed something for me and was expecting the response we get from a family member. What's going on? How can I help you? And when I didn't get that response, it made me take a step back and say, I've been treating this like a family now that I need the family. This is not the response I was expecting. And so it felt more of a punitive response to me. And so when you talk about somebody having those hesitations on reaching out to someone within their organization in fear of that, I could confirm that feeling just because it's something I've been through myself. And so by finding other ways of reaching other organizations and resources that don't involve going through an organization, I think that's what's really been a driving motivational factor in my approach. Is I still have a voice as an individual, and so I will just speak my truth whether you agree with it or not, but also because I feel like you're not addressing what we say is priority to us, and so that complete buy-in or complete withdrawal of the family part of it, I think, is one of the driving factors. And then again, Aaron was one of those people that I felt like was putting me first. And strangely enough, the way it's brought it, just to make it about the fire department in my situation, is on the back half of that, the people who did seem the most concerned and gave me most of those family feelings as far as putting my needs first was actually who'd been painted as the person to not go to find solutions. HR. I know those are two scary letters for most people. But what I found profoundly interesting in my case is that HR really made me feel like you need to take this time. You need to address this. Come back to us when you're ready.
Beautiful.
Complete opposite on the fire department front, which I was personally not happy with, but I could see how others in that same situation could not want to reach out for more.
Beautiful. I'm glad you had that experience from them because
me too.
They need it. It reminds me of Lawrence, Kansas. I will tout them because they're a model. They're the best model that I've seen. They've got an app and it's here's resources to keep yourself healthy. Here's resources to sleep. Here's resources to work out. And if you need therapy, here's a list of people to go to. All you got to do is go to them. You give them an employee number. They bill us. No questions asked. Attend to the problem. Get back to better. That's what it's about.
Asked.
So a lot, fantastic. And if anybody wants connections on that, by all means, they can reach out to me. It's easy to find Walt Disney therapist.
And we're going to, in the description of this episode, but also towards the end, we're going to give the exact contact information, websites, and how to find out more about Walter and the services he provides. Now, you brought up a great example. I thought I'd ask just a little bit more into this, if I could.
Can I wrap this other point up just real quickly?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Because a lot of people that have gone through an experience like you have describe it as betrayal. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you remember we talk about the difference between suffering and trauma is suffering alone. When the very person whose hand you're reaching out to withdraws their hand, feels like a betrayal. That is injurious. That's traumatic in and of itself. That's an attachment trauma. Thank you for that example. I appreciate it. We're on this vein of what we need to do for help, right?
Absolutely.
Here's what I'm going to say to everybody. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Despite Coors' claims, there is no silver bullet. Okay?
I like that.
This has to be a multi-modal approach. In other words, doing a lot of different things. Your focus happens to be a lot on the physicality, which is excellent. We have to have that. It's Dr. Daniel Siegel that has a template for this. It's called the Healthy Mind Platter. Healthy Mind Platter. 7 elements. Sleep. Sleep's a big one, especially with shift work and fire department all the time. Really important, okay? The other is exercise. The other is intellectual time or focus time. You can get that from meditation or intellectual work. We have to have creative downtime, okay? We have to have time where it's just zeroed out. Again, meditation will help with this, prayer, et cetera, et cetera. We need a couple other things. We need play and interaction, relationships. Those are the 7 things, according to Dr. Siegel's Healthy Mind Platter, that we have to have. So knowing that, how do we take in all of these things? I'm going to pitch a book real quickly because I think it's a great resource. He would be a great person for the podcast. But this is called Operator Syndrome by Dr. Chris Free. That's how you pronounce that. I even asked him. Dr. Chris Free. What he did is he worked with special operations, high tempo, high kinetic, high demands, and he found out this isn't all just psychological. There's many things, and if you get to the table of contents, right? In the table of contents, part 2, he's listed out about 15 different things that are afflicting us, okay? I'm going to read a few of them. Brain injury, which we talked ETMS. So ETMS Missouri is incredible. It's free to shield bearers and their family, funded by the state. Yeah. ETMSmissouri.com. Okay. It's funded by the state. Smart legislators and the current governor said, yes, let's do this for our shield bearers. Okay. They have it in other states.
That's putting your people first, in my opinion, when you can make it, remove all constraints to get to it. There's no financial burden that comes with it. It's come and get this resource. It's here waiting for you.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
The people that made this.
It is a beautiful thing. But we have TBI. We have sleep disturbance, hormonal dysfunction. You've heard of testosterone replacement therapy. It happens when the endocrine system gets overtaxed from all this adrenaline, et cetera, et cetera. We need to bring recovery to this, okay? Chronic pain, depression, anxiety, anger. We talked about that before. Hypervigilance, all fit within PTSD, but he does a section on this. Substance abuse, perceptual system impairment, cognitive impairment, right? So perception is the ability to see and perceive, balance, touch, feel, things like that. You see how all these things are coming into play. Toxic exposure. So let's talk about the fire service. How many times have you had smoke inhalation? How many times does that smoke contain some toxic elements? You don't absolutely know, but we can be assured if you spent a day in a fire, you've inhaled, which is one of the most powerful ways to ingest something. You've inhaled toxins. Okay. Yes. But you look at the inoculations, especially the military people have before we deploy, all these ends up toxins. They used to use mercury in vaccines as a preservative. That's a heavy metal.
Yes.
That's no bueno. That's an official term, by the way. No bueno. Okay. But how do we address this? Little bits at a time. Little bits at a time. We can break it down into heart, mind, soul, and body. Okay. There's a lot of medical in there, psychological, do the exams, right? One of the things that I know the SEAL teams have gotten into is getting their people physiologically recouped. So I've had 8 surgeries, 6 of those orthopedic, right? Wow. I don't function. I'm not the superhero I used to be, right? My last surgery really was hard on me. Actually, the anesthesia was hard too. It created some brain fog, which ETMS helped clear that up. Getting the body to be functionally strong again. They use a place called Virginia High Performance. That was out in Virginia, which is that way to me. And they've established one out on the West Coast too. But physiological, which is your parlance, is something so very important. Because when I'm not the superhero that I used to be, my identity and purpose gets challenged. That can exacerbate some depression, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's put it this way, that the rescue ranger or the rescue hero that I picked up 6 years ago, I can't pick him up anymore.
You risk another surgery if you do.
Exactly. So that changes. It's okay. That's some identity challenge. And we have to address those things, staying functional and fit. All those surgeries, I can't do the fitness regimes that I used to do, or regimens that I used to do. So we have to address all of those things. It's multi-modalities.
Okay. That's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot on the coaching side, hence why I got into the physical or the physiological approach of it. And I find a lot of the same challenges that you mentioned. It's more than just getting into the gym. It's more than just putting your body through something that's physically hard to gain
Yeah.
some reward at
Yeah.
the end. It's more than eating the right things, but we know if we can't control that, that's a great starting point. What I'm finding from there, the biggest lesson is taking on fitness and nutrition as a coach is that it requires a holistic approach. It's the mind, it's the body, spirit, all these other resources that I'm not a specialist at. And hence, finding people like yourself, it gives me an avenue to where, all right, I've got someone who can address this physical portion, but we
Yeah.
know that mentally and spiritually and vibrationally wise, they need to be holistically as far as
Yeah. Yeah.
healing and making that person better.
Yeah. There's a lot of woo given to energy, but there's a lot behind it that is very important. Our bodies are completely consumed by our nervous system. And that's all chemoelectrical. It's all energy. And so how do we keep that healthy? It's got to take nutrition, it's got to take exercise, mentally, physically. Okay. Our brain's 2 or 3% of our body weight, but takes up 10% of our energy. That's a lot of energy, right? So again, it's a multimodal. And this is why I started out saying, I said, slow is smooth is fast. Give yourself 2 years. Now we know that some changes can happen within 3 months. We have some evidence-based modalities on that, but give yourself 2 years. What do I want to be in 2 years? The reason I use that is there's a lot of science around changes in life, right? Moving, birth, death, job, marriage, those kinds of things. Grief, changes in life, addiction takes 2 years for the brain to reconstitute the right homeostasis. So if somebody ceases alcohol today, 2 years from now, their brain will achieve, if you will, a healthy homeostasis or chemistry again. So give yourself 2 years. What are you going to be in 2 years? Right? And implement these things little bits at a time.
Like that.
Yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense for me because this month hits the 2-year mark for me. It was 2 years ago. I decided I was not where I wanted to be physically. Of course, the mental was part of it, but the one thing I had some expertise in, obviously being a fireman, is the physical part. So I said, I'm going to get myself in shape.
Yeah.
And a year later, I started Tautua. I said, I did it. I want to show other people how they can do it.
Yeah.
Follow my steps. It's exercise and nutrition is essentially the same. But then I was able to actually look the part and do it. And then this month hits 1 year since I started Tautua Fitness as a fitness and nutrition approach. And so what I've learned, the biggest lesson I've learned over the last year is that to market my company, right? You got to get more eyes on your product. I'm learning more about attention span and social media marketing and all that. And so I had to have something to get people's attention.
Yeah.
To be honest, Instagram is a very shallow place. You got to have the muscles, you got to look the part, whatever, for people to get buy-in. And so that's been my hook to get people in. Hey, this guy that was out of shape, he's in shape.
Yeah.
But then we reel them in to what the real purpose is. And ultimately, it's about your body, but I'm worried about the person in whole, mental health, all of this good stuff.
So I'm going to do something real quickly. My son and I, who's my youngest, we have 4 kids. One of them, like I told you earlier, just flew in, a physician out in Oahu, and just flew in today. But my 19-year-old son, so I've got the heart of a linebacker, but the body of a water boy.
Give me the heart.
All day long.
Oh, yeah.
So my son, I'm hearing you go. It's been 2 years. I saw my vision. I got different. So I'm going to tell you what my son would say to you when the Chiefs make a first down, good play. Yes, let's go. You got to celebrate that stuff. You really do. It's an important site. If you look at Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habits, he talks about that. Any little thing that you do well, Let's go.
Celebrate the small wins.
And I celebrate that because you know what? We're both on a similar mission. We're raising the tide for a better we, for Tautua.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we got to celebrate that stuff. I celebrated when we got our designation as a 501c3. Took a lot to get there. They don't just hand it out. It means the government. We're
Going
beholden.
through the process and application process myself, I can 100% validate what
Yeah,
Mr. Walter
yeah.
is saying.
And so we celebrate these things. And I will tell you, when somebody comes in my office and I get a walk into the deep, dark cave of their mind with them, and we get to bring out a little more real, true self, and they walk out here feeling different, I celebrate, man. If I got written into the Disney fortune, I would do this for free.
Absolutely. That's how you know you found your purpose.
Exactly. When the desires of your heart meet the deepest needs of humanity, you found your purpose. Yeah.
That was one of the key insights for me. He's a personal friend for over 30 years, but also a business mentor. When we had the talk, it's actually, I'm going to show you my office now because
Awesome.
I've got it right here. You can't really see the script, but this is 10/22/23. All right. So it's my who I am no longer and who I am or who I profess to be. But the most important thing before getting to that stage of that document in particular is we spent the first several weeks trying to figure out my why. And he had said, so yeah, if I had the Disney fortune, whatever, I'd still be doing this.
Yeah.
And so I found that this avenue for me, fitness, nutrition, but holistically getting people to improve their mental health,
Yeah.
to stop this nonsense with firefighters having such a high suicide rate in comparison to their counterparts in the general public, to get them to not have this 10 years on average. Fire people in the fire service live 10 years on average less than the average American. 60% of firefighters are obese. That's 6 out of 10 of my coworkers. These are all things that affect me, but it's something I'm very, very intertwined with why that's my why. And since taking this on, I wouldn't care if I made a dime.
Yeah.
Didn't make a dime for the first several years.
Yeah.
Dabbling in it.
Yeah.
But when you know your why, it's the foundation for everything else that follows that. So when you mentioned that really resonated with me. And I think it's important that people focus in on that.
Well, without vision, the people fail. We have to make a vision. What is this going to look like? And why am I doing it? Because without that, we've got to revisit. So I applaud you, man, because you're living what you're preaching. It's going to be imperfect because we're human. I poop every day, right?
Of course.
If it's a good day.
Yeah, if they're
not a good day, happen, right? My father-in-law, who was a physician, said it's the morning constitution. And yeah, but without vision. And so creating a vision and like when I work with people, we create a treatment plan. What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what we're going to do. And I give them all the homework they want to do. I go, the more homework you do, the less you have to pay me. The faster you'll get better. You want to go here? That's fine. It's your choice. Right?
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned having a vision.
Yeah.
But you can also have a mission. Could you differentiate for those listening what the difference between having a mission and a vision?
Yeah. So the mission is the why. My mission is to create flourishing amongst the shield bearers, not just prevent suicide, create flourishing. You touched on a lot of those: health, longevity, et cetera, which for longevity, if you don't know Dr. Peter Attia, The Drive is his podcast, insourcing a resource there. But my mission is to promote flourishing amongst the shield bearers, that society can stay safe, so that society can flourish. Earlier, I talked about kids. When kids are safe, they laugh, engage, and play. That's flourishing.
Yes.
You look at America, the reason America is flourishing, we have resources, but it's safety, and it's safety through the numbers. Safety is number one. If you couldn't lock your door, if somebody took your front door off, would you sleep well that night?
Where I live now, currently, I would. Growing up, no.
Try it tonight. I'm going to challenge. Try taking your front door off. See how well you sleep.
I'll take it completely off. No, definitely would not sleep well, not having the feeling that I'm secure and safe.
Exactly. So safety is number one. That's why a part of our brain called the amygdala, it's binary. We're either safe or not safe. So if it's safe, you can come and you get to migrate up to my prefrontal cortex, where all this creative, communal, connected, logical stuff, higher order stuff comes in. But if you're not safe, fight, flight, or freeze. And there's two other things that happen there. And you've probably seen them. Fainting. By the way, if you want to laugh, watch fainting goats. They keel over.
I want one of those things. I don't know.
We'll talk about that as we move along, okay?
Okay.
Because I think Providence has some property in our future, and we might have some goats on there. They did before. But we could get a fainting goat just for the purposes of demonstration.
As long as they're of the fainting assortment, I think those are the most fascinating animals.
So the other one is fawning.
And
this means somebody's in fear. So you've probably seen it. You see it in domestic violence, where the victim in domestic violence believes they have no other way to go, or nobody else will love them or keep them or take them. So they soothe the violent one so that they feel safe. But here's a story. My neighbor was married to a woman. This is one of the most beautiful men I know. Just mountain of a man, and just would go any distance for anybody. Beautiful man, Cal. And his wife at the time drug his daughter by the hair, pulled out chunks of hair, and he confronted that, yelling, screaming. In the midst of that, the daughter grabs both the parents. Mind you, she's just had physical trauma. Grabs both the parents by the legs and just say, "Mommy and Daddy, tell each other that you love each other."
Wow.
The child is fawning because the parents are the linchpin to their sense of safety, and they're at odds. So the child's trying to soothe the parent. This is called parentification. It's very unhealthy. But those are the 5 responses to the amygdala sensing fear, which also there's studies that show the amygdala, it's a very small piece of anatomy right at the base of the brain, that it atrophies or grows up to 5 times normal size when exposed to repeated trauma. Think war or first responders, shield bearers, right? And so there's ways to get that neuroanatomy back to normalization. A lot of it has to do with yoga and mindfulness and degaussing that energy and decreasing the energy people take in. Have you ever heard of floating? They now call it restricted environmental stimuli tanks, REST.
That's the complete zero like gravity, right? They're in like tanks.
That is one way. Yeah, that's one way to get the nervous system calmed down. It's very good for anxiety, depression, ADD, PTSD.
Are there places around here locally that do it, or how would somebody find out more information?
If you just Google, I don't want to promote anybody. I will say that I can say this because my experience is with the place in Waldo, right behind and floating KC. And they offer a discount, or did, to first responders. Now, It's very small. It's in this place called the Yoga Patch, and they have a vegan restaurant, and so it's what we would call hippy dippy. This is not pejorative, right? This is good stuff. Yoga is scientifically proven. Meditation is scientifically proven to help all of the above afflictions. Floating, scientifically proven. But I got to tell you something funny about floating, because you go in, it's real spa-like, and they're like, "Hey, come on in and sit in the chair, relax," and you're in this spa robe. I go naked. Sorry for that picture, but anyway,
Is it in complete darkness or what?
Totally. You go into this big room and you shower in there. Inside is a 7 by 7 fiberglass structure. It's got 9 inches of water that's got Epsom salt, so hypersaline, hypertonic, right? And so you shower off, clean off your toxins. You go in there, shut the door, music and lights go to zero. The water is hypothermic, so it's 94 degrees, about the same temperature as your skin. Wow. Zero light, zero sound, and this hypertonic solution is slowly drawing out toxins that may be in your water. That's why you shower afterward. But the unique thing about me is when I get environments like that, like my spidey senses go up. Mm-hmm. Like I get quickened, right? And I'm like echolocating, seeing if I can figure out where I'm at in the tank, because you're in this square, you're floating on a square of water, if you
only 8 inches, or are you completely submerged in this?
Yeah, it's got so much Epsom salts, or I think it's not sodium, so it's potassium chloride. Is that right?
Essentially it's just salt. Salt's heavier than water, and so
yeah, it's hypertonic, so it's floating you. So you float in it. And you come out very placid, mentally, physiologically. Also, I do something else. I have a chair. It's a great technology. It's called the Shift Wave chair. I actually sell them. I believe in the technology so much. I use them on my clients before they come in to get their nervous systems to relax. So at some point, make an appointment on my website.
Okay.
To do an hour, Kia, so you know what it's like. Because I tried to do that for some people. But it actually does an external stimuli through sound waves, low frequency sound waves, orchestrating your breathing to get your nervous system down. It's pretty intense. Yeah.
And beneficial. Real quickly
So hold on for a second. I'm going to let you hit an edit. I've got to take a 1-minute break, okay?
Same here. Quick restroom break. I can pause it. Hey, we both must have been on the same note.
Oh, yeah. I had my fizzy lifting drink, so now I've got to pee.
We can hold if you need
that's where I went for the minute.
Oh, me too.
So now you get to do the edit out our pee.
Oh, this part's easy. I mean, that part's easy.
Good. Let me give you a mark right here and go back to the Shift Wave chair. You can find out more about it at shiftwave.co, as in Charlie Oscar, shiftwave.co. Just explore it. If there's anybody around here and they're interested in it, they can go to my website, www.disneyfamilytherapy.com, and book a Shift Wave session to do a walk-in and find out what it's about. So I was actually trained in massage therapy, and I'd rather do an hour on my Shift Wave chair than get a massage. And it just changes. I sit in it 4 or 5 times a week for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. They've got some really incredible ones. Look at you. Somebody's techie.
I had to find out more. So that's the chair.
Yeah, that's the chair.
Let's look at it. This is what people are.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and this is what I deal with a lot, is there are somatic anchors. Remember I said the nervous system is it's incorporated in our body, head to toe, finger to finger, toe to toe. And when I do the work that I do, and a lot of what we're talking about has to do with the neurological status of what a person's at, PTSD, the anxiety, depression. By the way, when you work with people, I would encourage you to do some anxiety and depression surveys and then every 3 months or 2 years, reassess it. And I will almost guarantee that you will see positive results in that. when I work with people, remember we talked about IFS, and we
Yeah.
would start by saying, okay, let's talk about something that bothered you. I got a flashback. I remembered this code that we ran, and the person didn't make it. Okay. We were not successful in resuscitating. And I would ask them, okay, where does that coalesce energy in your body? And I might say, my stomach. Okay. So just focus on that. What we call this is a somatic anchor or a somatic experience. And there's a whole theory approached or attached to that. But it's all about the nervous system. So the shift wave chair helps me keep my nervous system in a healthy state. So when I'm working with people, and remember how earlier, Kia, I asked you, how did it feel when the people that you went to for help pulled their hand back? What we find is when we get tuned into our body and our nervous system, that we're able to detect smaller shifts that say, oh, I felt like I wasn't good enough. Could be shame down in the gut. Or I felt fear like, oh no, who are they going to tell and take my job away? Or a lump in my throat. Now I can't tell the truth. My voice has been taken away. So we have these idioms that we use like pain in the neck, lump in the throat, heartache, love, gut feeling about something, pain in the back.
It's a good way to
I
put
can't
it.
tell you how many people like in the shield bearer demographic who are carrying a heavy load have back pain. There's a great book out there, How to Heal Back Pain. And I think the proportion, if I'm quoting it correctly, was almost 70% of the people who reported back pain did not have mechanical pathology. In other words, either soft tissue or vertebrae or discs, right? Didn't have that. Almost 70%. The pathology was from the nervous system.
Wow.
Because what happens, this is a part in our back going, oh, you're taking on too much. And I will tell you, I do have some mechanical pathology. I got a break injury when I was in the teams on a jump. And when my anxiety is high, when I've got a heavy load, I feel it and my back tightens up. So I just buried a good friend yesterday. He was a board member, part of our board member of Camp David. And I felt it in my back yesterday. And we have to pay attention to those. But when we do, we can attend to or
Sorry for your
therapy.
loss.
Pardon?
Sorry for your loss, by the way. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you. Thank you.
I don't-
When we pay attention, the loss actually challenged me. I had a bit of a sense of abandonment. It was an existential crisis too. So I was wrestling with God a little bit. And I was sitting in the chair doing that, actually, in the shift wave chair. And I got the answer I needed. And the answer was that I'm not alone. And Matt was a gift to have for the years that we had him. Fantastic, impressive guy. Country guy. Didn't have a lot of emotive stuff, a real man's man kind of thing. And yet, if you were in his heart, there's nothing he would do to protect you or provide for you. A real, truly beautiful human being. Beautiful masterpiece.
Wow.
So Matt Lawson, yeah. So I felt a lot of that in my heart, on my back, and we have to pay attention to those things. And that's part of what Shield Bearers is about, is getting us attuned to that somatic experience or somatic manifestation of what's going on.
And speaking of back issues, we know that's pretty common, especially with first responders. Like back injuries is up. Having stress or heavier backpack or heavier wheelbarrow could be attested to that, as far as not having any physiological or structural damage. It's that chronic back pain.
Yeah.
And some of these ways of alleviating that are with physical exercise and making sure that your weight's down, so it's not putting so much extra pressure on your back. But this shift wave chair also offers a whole nother approach at alleviating some of this back pain. From what I'm seeing here are some of the benefits with it's got a ton of things. I'm booking my appointment.
Good.
I've got to book it.
We have to be
try it,
careful. And we can't make claims like medical claims like it'll cure your back pain.
Sure.
But what it does is it addresses the nervous system. Okay? That's what it does. I'm saying that this shifts what I sense in my body after utilizing it. So even after a 5 minute, introduction session, I will ask people, how do you feel now? Because just like in medicine, assess, treat, reassess. So I go, after sitting in this, how do you feel? And they're like, I feel relaxed. And I'm like, what about your cognition, the content of your mind? They're like, clear, free, peaceful. Do you like that? Yeah, we can achieve that. But people get that out of meditation too. Again, this incorporates yogic practices. So from true yoga practices with breath, not the postures. People can feel that from yoga as well. But this is a way that so they're utilizing the company Shiftwave. Dr. Mike North is taking this over to Ukraine and using it for trauma incidents over there to treat people who've gone through traumatic wartime experiences. I think they have 6 or 7 chairs over there now they're working with. But it's a fantastic modality. Again, it's part of the approach. It's not the silver bullet.
I think the way you explain it helps me think, all right, even if you are stretching, even if you are doing all these things, if you're in a highly stressed state, you're not relaxed and you're not focusing in on just being better holistically, that's not going to help your back. But this is one other approach that you can take to help alleviate and the benefits be decreased back pain. Because you're so tight, you're so bound up that
I've often been in this arena enough to know about the vagus nerve and sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous states.
Yes.
Okay. So if we're in sympathetic nervous state all the time, doesn't matter how much we stretch, the signal is still going to be sent, get ready to fight, so to speak, right? Or it's safe. You can rest, digest, reproduce. Okay.
Yep.
Versus the fight, flight, freeze. And that's what it's helping to do. There's a real neat thing that the chair does is it gets real intense and instigates your sympathetic nervous system and then stops. And you feel like you're free fall, just floating down.
Wow.
It's an absolutely wonderful experience. But that's then getting your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in.
Yeah. And we know that's a common problem, especially with first responders, cops, all the people that we're focused in on, is that whether you're on duty or not, it's the hardest part of coming off the job is that you're on patrol. You're on high awareness. And so you're very stimulated to your sympathetic nervous system. And the problem comes in when you're off. How to shut that off, how to start signaling that parasympathetic or that rest and digest to calm down so you can get good sleep. So you don't have to drink yourself to sleep or do whatever you got to do. So you're not in watch mode when you get around the wife and kids. So you're not snappy. You're not on the hyper vigilant. That's something that I'm always trying to look into to focus in on. But then here are all these different avenues. Here's another approach. Here's a way to start signaling that parasympathetic nervous system is looking to floating.
Yeah.
A float room, which I'm going to be getting more information after this, by the way.
Yeah.
Sit in chairs, get massages, yoga, mindfulness, exercise, diet, all of this.
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted approach, and you should be looking into several different avenues on getting that addressed, especially if it's a problem.
I'll send you a link while I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Technology can be so cool.
It is. You talked about it earlier today when we were talking about some of the hormonal processes that happen behind it and keeping our people healthy. We know that generally total testosterone levels and first responders tends to be on the decline fairly quickly. So for the average populace, any time after the age of 40, we could decrease as much as 1% a year. But having these stress-related jobs where your sympathetic nervous system is stimulated at all times, also we know could lead to chronically elevated cortisol levels, which is the body stress hormone, which it does exactly what it's supposed to do in the short term. You burn sugar, you burn energy, you're hypervigilant. But what we're finding out with chronically elevated levels through a sustained amount of time starts having some of the opposite effects. And then there's a cascade of issues that happen along with that. But all these are fairly important. So we should be looking into any type of way that could benefit you at any level, and trying to get your hormone levels and your stress levels and signaling the right properties to stimulate the right nervous systems.
Yeah.
And it's having a good understanding at that. I believe that's a lot of the approach that you all have.
Yeah.
I just got the text message too, by the way.
Got what?
The text message too. Oh, did you say?
Yep,
there it is. Casey Floating. I'm going to be checking that out.
So if I don't do something right now, I'm so ADD that I'll forget it.
Oh, same way. I'm taking notes as we go through this too, as well. So I'm going to be able to pull up all the books you have mentioned. I tried writing some notes. I'm not as good as AI. I think it does a better job, but I'm really interested in looking into. Could you plug that book one more time? The one you were showing me earlier.
Yeah.
Right there. I'm very interested in reading. To find out more about that one.
So this is Dr. Chris Free. He's actually at the University of Hawaii Hilo. So you might get an excuse to go over the islands, man.
I'd love to go and interview him.
Yeah. Operator syndrome. And it's a great resource. And that taps into really what people can do. Quite honestly, become a student. If you've heard this podcast or other people, become a student. You don't have to learn it all today. Find different things. Find people. The great thing about our community with shield bearers, like I said, a community of the brave recovering each other or restoring each other back to service. Great network of information. I don't know everything. Can't. Nobody can. Become a student. Become a student. Find out what works for other people. Okay. So sleep, we talked about that. Mindfulness, those two things, and nutrition and exercise, those things I think would carry somebody a long way if they're really a student. I'll go back and touch on something in a minute, but so one of the things that if I were to create a routine, and you touched on something in terms of family, and I've seen this all too often, and I am oriented toward the system or the family as a marriage and family therapist because I've seen it all too often. You pick up garbage from the street and then you literally emotionally, energetically take it home to the family. Mm-hmm. Why is dad angry all the time? Gosh, who was it? Somebody said to me, oh yeah, one of our guys. Love this guy. Great cop. He was a Marine, now he's a cop, and he's gone through some really heavy stuff. And he is the epitome of a brave shield bearer, just competent and yet human. We can't ever forget that, human. So he said, my 12-year-old daughter said, Dad, I didn't ever see you laugh or smile before. Mm-hmm. And since he's been through our course, he's joking around and stuff. I love dad jokes. Mm-hmm. So I sprinkle dad jokes every once in a while.
They're awful, but they're so good.
They're awfully good.
I like it. It took me becoming a dad to truly appreciate the power that comes with having a...
Anybody can tell a dad joke and anybody can appreciate it.
Yeah, they never miss.
So I'll tell you, this will be perfect for the audience. So my friend is at church and he's like in the 4 or 5-year-old church and they're having something. All the parents are there. It's some parent kids night and they're telling dad jokes. And this like little 4-year-old girl gets up and she goes, what kind of bees are the scariest bees? Boo, bees. And everybody was just floored. The kids were laughing. The parents were like just rolling inside out.
I love it.
So you get those every once in a while.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Don't forget that one. Scariest bees.
You had touched on it a little bit earlier when we talked about it actually quite in detail about back stuff. It actually leads me to what I've got for the rest of my day. I'm taking care of my dad who's actually had compression fracture at T3.
Wow.
I got him out of the hospital this past Sunday, and he's in rehab now, but I'm going to personally be doing a lot of his physical therapy once he gets discharged from the current level of care that he's at. But with
Can I
that,
just say something
sure.
very personal? That is such a beautiful thing, and I'll tell you why. Because in our society, we are so disintegrated, especially multi-generationally, that we lose that touch, Kia. And for you to be able to go and, right, Tautua, serve your father like that. Beautiful thing, man. Beautiful thing.
Thank you for that. I need to get better at taking compliments. But I feel like it's my duty, both being his namesake, and then I pass the curse along to my son. He's got this long Polynesian name that it's hard to pronounce, but you got to know where you come from. And I always have great respect and admiration for my dad.
Yeah.
But also working on the healthcare side of it. I've been in it over 20 years. We deal a lot with nursing homes and long-term care facilities.
Yeah.
And it's got a bad rap at work. Just people, oh, here we go again, back to this place. But it's always had a special place in my heart. That's where I got my start in healthcare, as I worked dietary at a nursing home. And hence that sparked my interest in wanting to do more on the medical side.
Yeah.
But what you see often is people will park loved ones there and off they go. And you'll see this really quick decline in people. And so culturally speaking, in our culture, there's those type of things don't exist. It's because the family always takes in the elderly and the younger. There's no orphans. It's not as prevalent as it is, but having the idea of an orphan or somebody that doesn't belong to a family is very unheard of, very rare. And so this is just an opportunity where we can come together as a family, especially if I have any expertise in it at all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rely on somebody else when I have a chance to go and do it, but also happy to serve. But that's actually the next thing I've got on my books here in about an hour. We're going to head out to Blue Springs and start with that. So if you're all right with it, could I get a couple of closing remarks or closing statements from you? And I'm going to plug some of your contact info here too. But 2 hours goes like that. I wish we had 4, but this is going to spark a lot for those who are listening in or watching in. We touched on a plethora of topics. Any one of those I can spend a long time in. I'm very passionate about it. And if I might brag on you for a little bit, this has been one of the most insightful conversations because you're able to give a complex idea and explain it so eloquently, but also give some of the data points and resources to follow up on those points. Several different acronyms that I'm going to have to revisit back to this, but I'm going to put them out there so that others can learn those too and follow up on some of these books and resources that you talked about, both for me personally on scheduling some of these appointments, but pretty excited to find out some of the things we could be working on together here in the future. And closing up and wrapping this up, do you have any key points that you want to re-highlight or any closing statements you want to say to anybody who might be watching or listening in?
First, I want to say I received that compliment. I appreciate it. I will tell people when I do something good, it's not my fault. We stand on shoulders of giants. We have our family who have given us so much. But I think that I wasn't there when I was conceived. I didn't design the blueprints for Walter David Disney. I'm just trying to drive this vehicle as best I can, right? Blessing and Tautua, right? Serving, making a better we. And to hear that it hit the mark is just a beautiful thing. And it gets back to something you spoke of, is I'm not good at accepting compliments. Most of us aren't. And it's really tragic. And this is why I believe that. Because each person is a unique divine masterpiece. Okay? You may have your father's name, but you're unique. Your son has your name. He's unique. You know that.
Very much.
Made for a certain time for the good work to lift the we when you're created. And so in that, it's not my fault. I'm just trying to courageously participate with what I've been given. And when we tell people that we've seen something good in them, we're actually celebrating creation. We're celebrating that they're a unique divine masterpiece. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. When you put it in context like that, it makes a lot of sense.
And I remember when I was in third grade playing soccer at the YMCA in Brookside. The coach said, Disney, I want you in the goal. I trust your reflexes. Okay. That was 51 years ago. How big do you think that was for me? It called out something he saw in me that was pure, noble, true, just, lovely, of good report, good for humanity. And because of that, I've been confident in using that gift.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
And so we need to call that out. We don't do it because we're like, oh, we don't want to puff somebody up and make them egotistical. We're not. We can do it in a way that is right. And we're like, this is good. Use it. Make sense?
It does. We know the word is very powerful. It's a double-edged sword too. You could save the world, or you could cause ultimate harm.
Yeah.
Depending on the words and the choices of words that you use.
Yeah. Oh, get into the way it was said. That's my realm in here, right?
Yeah, I love it.
So closing thoughts. Know your why. Okay. When you look in the mirror, I hope that you see your why. I hope everybody out there sees their why, that they're a unique divine masterpiece made specifically for a time like this. They were made to do this. And you know what? Some people force themselves into certain places. Acknowledging that you're not that is just as valuable as acknowledging what you are. Okay.
Wow.
But look in the mirror and be courageous enough to explore anything, be courageous and confident to explore anything, to find out who that is in the mirror. The other thing is be a student of who you are. That's all the stuff we've talked about. Heart, mind, soul, body. We live in an age where there's so much wonderful information. I'll plug Andrew Huberman. There's another plug at Sean Ryan. Are you familiar with Sean Ryan podcast?
I'm sure if I played a sound bit, I would know it straight away. I can't think of.
He's a former SEAL team guy and then CIA contractor. And now he has a podcast. And he does some of the coolest. I love his stuff. I'll send you one of the most important ones that I've ever watched of his.
Okay.
But there's so much information. Become a student. I know how I learn. I don't learn by reading books.
Same.
I don't. Podcasts are great. Video podcast, even better for me because that's the way I learn. I learn by this, like interacting with people and listening, right? And this is why the long form podcast is so great. You not only get this information, you get to know another person. Make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that has a weird thing to it too, because I don't know if you've ever had somebody watch your podcast and come up and go, Kia, man, you're awesome. You're just like, who is this person? Did I meet you some night when I was inebriated or something?
I'm always worried about that. Like, whoop. I call him Kevin. Did you meet me or did you meet Kevin?
There's a guy looked just like me. Yeah. No, it was Walt Disney.
Yeah. I haven't got to that point yet, but I think actually I've ran into some people just off social media where that's happened. And I both welcome that and also fear it a little bit at the same time. I like my anonymity and I like being just a Joe Schmo, but as long as it's helpful. And what I tell them every time is like, as long as you found it helpful, I am so glad I met you.
Yeah.
I don't put
a
whole lot out there. But.
So again, be a student of yourself. People in this line, if I were to tell them to study two things, number one, Huberman's got a great podcast on sleep and a great podcast on shift work sleep. I'll try to find those and send them to you so you can post them. Okay. You'll have to remind me. The other is mindfulness or meditation. When I work with people, I've come across an app called Balance, just like your balance keeps you upright. Balance. Do you want to hear it alphanumerically? Bravo Alpha, Lima Alpha, November Charlie Echo.
I've never learned to do it. I could BS it once in a while. Wow.
That's all right. So that app has foundations for it'll teach you how to do meditation and mindfulness. If somebody came off shift and spent 10 to 15 minutes just going through a mindful meditation, right? Showered, left their gear at the department, drove home slowly, the slow route, not the highway, they would arrive home more authentic person. They would leave that BS back there. When they're getting ready to go in, there's ways to use your breath. Get ready. It's put on the uniform, put on the gear, get your breath ready, and learn how to tap it, be aware of, and tap into your breath. Because you can use your breath to escalate your awareness and nervous system. Shift Wave Chair does that all the time. So those are the things, and be a student of yourself. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I'm struggling. I'm having a day. And develop those relationships. This is what we try to do. This is foundational for shield bearers. Try to develop those relationships where you can call somebody and go, hey, my wheelbarrow's full. And they go, okay, what do you need? Just go for a walk, right? I know you firefighters do choir practice at 8 a.m. when you get off shift. Not a good avenue. Can be fun, but not the best avenue, right? But get Dr. Free's book, Operator Syndrome. Start exploring that stuff. There's a lot of wonderful modalities out there, and just get with somebody who can explore that. So I'm looking at starting a podcast myself and just trying to do some teachings and things like that on the multiple modalities of care for the whole person. So that's what I would say. Be honest with yourself. Name the elephant. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Man, I'm going to be, hopefully I'm guessing it is on Amazon, but I'm going to probably be purchasing that book today. I'm very interested on finding out more of the different modalities and ways of learning more about operator syndrome, because a lot of that strikes home with me, and I think it could be beneficial. And I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. If you haven't started a podcast, I pulled up some of your episodes earlier. You should be, because I got on this to interview you and maybe give you some insights. That's always just how I approach it as a host. But I could not stop listening to what you have to say and the things you have to offer. I think it's phenomenal. And I think more guys and gals, or anybody who is a shield bearer, as you define it, could benefit from this. Yeah. I know we all do. And the first thing they have to do, turn around and call out that elephant that's in the room.
Yeah.
Call it. So thank you for those closing statements. So if you are trying to identify the elephant in your room or in your life, you can find and reach out to Mr. Walter Disney here. He has a family therapy clinic in the Kansas City area. If you want more information on that website, it's www.disney, that's Disney Family Therapy. Also, if you want more information on Camp David, that website, again, is www.camp-david.org. That's also where you can find out more about some of the things and events that he will be having, speaking engagements, which is really how he and I got connected in the first place. And so in closing, wow, what an incredible conversation today with you today, Walter, from serving in the Navy SEALs to guiding individuals and families through some of the toughest life problems and emotional battles. Walter's journey reminds us all of the power of resilience, responsibility, and community. His insights on transitioning from military life, owning your destiny, and healing through connecting really resonate with me personally, and we're going to be following up more after the show. Whether it's a veteran, a first responder, or even a family member navigating through their own challenges, Walter and I both are encouraging you to reach out. It starts in the conversation.
Yeah.
And those are the first steps towards healing.
Yeah.
Walter works again at the Disney Family Therapy, and he also is part of the Camp David movement. So again, reach out to those resources, gave you the websites. And also, if I didn't mention it already, if you want to email Mr. Walter, directly. His email is Walt, WALT, at DisneyFamilyTherapy.com. So just so grateful and thankful for giving me the amount of time. 2 hours just flies by, and I could definitely do 3 more, and dive into some of these nuanced topics. But I thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. I know you've been going through a lot here recently, and even today we have other events that are larger than us. But you took the time, and time's the most valuable thing you have, Walt. And you spent some of that with me. So of that, I'm truly appreciative.
Yeah.
So
it's been a pleasure. I was grateful that Aaron connected us, and I'm excited where this is going to go. No, I don't want to assume that you would, but if you ever want to do this again, I'd love to do it with you.
I do. It's going to take me to fully digest and comprehend it and follow up on a lot of these resources. But I would love, especially as I do some of this reading, I'm sure I'll identify some parts that, all right, I'd really like to cover this one topic and aim it towards this target group of people. But all of it's helpful. But I feel like these are more like discovery calls for us too, because we get to touch on everything, but not really dive in too deep. A ton of good stuff. And I would absolutely love to have a couple more hours with you in person or here via this way. This just happened to be the most convenient way today, but I've got to. I've got to visit the mean streets of Brookside soon and come there and check some of these places out, but meet you in person.
I can't afford the mean streets of Brookside anymore, man. I'm just a broken vet who's doing therapy. I haven't gotten written into the riches yet, but that's all right. I get the manna that I need. So I want to ask you a favor.
Sure.
Because one of my favorite things is the Polynesian war dance prior to game or wedding competition. And I love Hawaii. I went there. My wife and I took our first vacation there to go see our son. A beautiful place. We could talk. We could have fun just chatting about that too. Just beautiful stuff. But the Polynesian language has a different alphabet. But I would like to ask you the favor, if you know my name, Walter David Disney, I would like to know your full name.
Okay, my full name is Moanututia Tuala Tamalelangi II. And for all intents and purposes, Kia Tuala suits just fine. And to give you a little background, well, where'd you get the K? Where'd you get this? T and K in the Samoan language is interchangeable depending on the not dialect, but like a Southern accent is going to vary differently from a Northeastern accent. K is what you would consider the informal approach, and T is very formal, how you would talk to somebody with respect or somebody that's of higher status than you. So it could be Kia or Tia, and I would know exactly who you are based on how you called me out. But Moanu Tutia, Tuala Tamalelangi, which essentially just means first to speak or first to eat, which I find it's a title, but what I find is a little different because I feel like leaders should eat last. But in my culture, from a cultural context, that's how you show respect to those who lead. So there's always conflict. But I think the beauty is in finding the balance between the two.
Yeah. So have you seen Next Goal Wins?
Yes. Phenomenal movie.
I gotta tell you, I watched that on the flight back from Hawaii. And Tiki Waititi I literally have to practice his name to say it correctly. It was one of the most enjoyable, fun movies. It had meaning to it. It's just, I was laughing out loud on the plane. My wife liked it.
That's a good one.
Oh, it was so funny. American Samoa. It was just, they're doing 8 jobs and they're playing soccer. Yeah. It was fantastic. It's up there for me.
That's a good one. I'd like to see him go a little bit further in the soccer world, but it always comes down to money, right? Some of these huge countries with deep budgets, but it just shows their love for the game.
Maybe we'll start a GoFundMe off this podcast and get some money for them.
Hey, as long as they're going to Samoan rugby, soccer. Yeah, I think any money going back home. I have some really good friends that are actually going to be there. What is today? Today's the 24th. Oh, they're out there now for a good friend of mine's wedding. And then they're also going to be having a musical event. One of them's a music artist and putting on a big thing for them. So maybe we could plug them in too. All the money back to Samoa.
That would be fun. That would be fun. Maybe we can maybe Tiki wants Walt Disney's autograph and he'll do some FaceTime for us to get some money.
And I want to say Tiki, that's the main character, correct?
He was actually the director. He played the priest.
Okay.
The irreverent priest.
Okay. Maybe I'll reach out to him on Instagram and see if we do a bartering system. I'll get you an autograph if you plug our fundraising.
I'm sure we're going to do more of this. There's going to be more because we're on the same team in our missions. So Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you, Swal. I know again that your time is very limited and you spent some with me. I am so grateful, and I'm going to be following up on a lot of these. I'm going to maybe if you're all right with it, I'll text you questions and stuff when they come through.
Yeah. So I would even offer, if you want to put it out there to your audience, that if they have follow-up questions on any of this, maybe we'll take their questions and create another podcast off those questions.
I like that. We'll do a Q&A. On Spotify, where I post this, I can do a short poll, but also I list out all the ways that people can reach out to you, and then I'll make some additional content with this shorts and reels, and then ask people to follow up. So that's one of the great ways of doing long form content, is that you can create a ton of short form, but then see what resonates with people and see what questions they have. So I will keep you in the loop as far as all those metrics that come through, because I'm excited to use them. And
awesome, man.
Okay.
Well, tell your dad that he did well, and that Walt Disney says hello.
He'll be stoked.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at it, but thank goodness for AI. AI does a good portion of it, and hopefully we get some good clicks. But I'm excited to do it. Thanks for hopping in today, and I appreciate your time. All right. We'll see you. Thanks, Walt.